We're inside of one of the SEMA show's featured areas known as FutureTech Studio. It's all about promoting future technologies and different options really for our members to take advantage of for the future, for the development of new products and really how to integrate themselves with new technology as it's coming on board of new vehicles, as well as integrating new technology into older vehicles too. So we're excited to have this panel coming up here. Big thanks to our partners over at Motivo who really made all the talent happen. This panel is all about electrification, the challenges and opportunities as well. Obviously challenges, it's new technology. It's new technology to our members, it's new technology for a lot of folks, especially small startup businesses. But it's also a great opportunity to you as well. You get to grow your product development. With this panel, we're going to see examples from companies like Unplugged Performance, who is purely focused on battery electric. We're also going to see Meyers Manx, again, a company that's been around for many years, developing products for internal combustion engine applications, now going to battery electric. FormosaEV, also focused on battery electric. We're excited. New products, new technology, it's all here. So for more information as far as what SEMA is doing, what SEMA Garage is doing, what new technologies we're bringing on board for the SEMA show next year, visit us at SEMAgarage.com, get in contact with us, enjoy this panel. We'll see you next year.
The focus of this panel is going to be about the future of electrification. And not really what's going on with the OEMs, with new new models and new battery technology, but really how that's spawning innovation across the whole supply chain in a lot of different areas, and how that's all trickling down into new business models and the new products being developed and innovation at even smaller scales. I think, unless you're an OEM or CATL and you have tens of millions of dollars to pour into battery technology, that seems to be the focus of a lot of the innovation talk around electrification. But I hope what you guys are going to see today is all that investment is really enabling small businesses, new audacious visionaries, medium businesses to be able to innovate and grow. And that's what we're going to be covering in this panel here today. So we're going to be talking about electric resto mods, classic cars being converted. We're going to talk about electric dune buggies and specialty vehicles. We're going to be talking about essentially upfits of OEM vehicles for fleet, for performance. So we're going to cover all that. It's going to be a really fun discussion. And you get to tune out from all the news coverage going on and what else is going on today. So I think, that's a good one for me. This is a perfect discussion for the FutureTech area. Thank you, SEMA, again, for having us. I love cars, but I'm an engineer by training. And when I see the technology and the innovation around here, that just gets my childlike sense of wonder going. Oh my gosh, look at all this cool stuff. And then my grumpy adult brain kicks in and asks, can you actually make money on any of this though? So I think we want to cover both on this panel today, both the business side, what's going on in the industry, and then on the technology and innovation side. Before we get into that, I'll introduce myself. We'll do my little clicker check here. My name's Christian Amel. I'm a product director at Motivo. I run about half of our portfolio. If you've never heard of Motivo, don't feel bad. We try to be, in a lot of ways, one of the industry's best kept secrets in terms of developing new technologies and new products. If you have heard of Motivo, it's probably because you follow Donut Media on YouTube. And we did a really cool video with them where we directly measured the horsepower of a horse using an old Honda body strapped down to a trailer dyno. So go check out that video if you haven't seen it. It's really, really amusing. But in short, I like to call it, we're like a Willy Wonka factory for nerds and gearheads and people who are just interested in technology. We do product development and engineering in Southern California. Our founders came out of the race world. They worked for Rob Millen at Millen Works, and they figured out how to take that kind of urgency and how to balance risk in the race world and apply that to all kinds of different industries. From aerospace, we've worked on flying cars, to agriculture, where a company that was spun out of Motivo developed the first all-electric autonomous tractor over here, Monarch Tractors. So that's a really beautiful piece of technology. I encourage you to go check it out after the panel. Thank you. But a core part of our business is still automotive. We did a lot of early electrification and automation efforts, and we've been working on 3D printed supercars. I was just working on a project for wireless charging, 11 kilowatt wireless charging for electric vehicles. So lots of new exciting innovation going on in the EV space, in the automotive space, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. So we're thrilled to get the invite from SEMA to talk about innovation, but 99% of what we do, we can't talk about. It's all hush-hush, under NDA. I used to work for the government doing spooky, weird government stuff, and I think the automotive industry is maybe seconds in terms of secrecy. and keeping things under wraps. So we can't talk about that. I don't want to talk in generalities. So we thought, let's invite some people, some innovators, thought leaders here in the space today to talk specifically about what they're doing, the challenges they're seeing, the opportunities that they're seeing, and how that's all going to play out over the next couple years. So without further ado, let me introduce that panel. Let me get the cool things going here. Do this. Try again. Not so cool yet. We're a technology company, I swear. Hey, there we go. That's me. But we're going to keep going. First, I'm going to introduce Zack Hwang. He's the founder of FormosaEV. Like me, Zack's also an engineer by training, but really in his work working in OEM supply chain, saw a big need related to the components going into EVs and how those can be used to do conversions. So Motivo's actually been working with Zack for the past few months on his product. And I want to say congratulations to Zack. You won an award from SEMA for one of the best new products in this category. So can we give Zack a huge round of applause? Congratulations, Formosa. It's a huge honor, really exciting. So Zack, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about FormosaEV?
Sure, thank you, Christian. So Zack Hwang, I'm a Taiwanese American engineer. Like Christian mentioned, my background is from the OEM EV supply chain. And actually, my first SEMA was 3 years ago. I kind of came here by accident. I showed up in a suit and tie because I didn't do any research about this crowd. I found that people were building really cool EVs, and they didn't really have the good components we were used to in the OEM world. So that's when we started working on FormosaEV. Our mission is to create the nicest, most easy to use, user-friendly, and OEM grade EV components for folks, DIY and professional, to use in their EV conversions. And so that's why we're here today. We have our booth over there with our demo, and we welcome everyone to come check it out later.
Cool. Next up, we got Ben Schaffer. So Ben is the CEO and founder of Unplugged Performance, of Bulletproof Automotive, of Up.Fit. I'm sure he'll talk about all the cool vehicles that he's got spread all over the conference. Ben was an early key figure in kind of the Japanese tuner scene, and then also now the EV tuner scene, and just incredible products, upgrades, mods, aftermarket components across the EV space, and now also going into outfitting the military and police. And so Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you guys are doing? And I'll play this cool sizzle reel. Don't get too distracted.
Hey everybody. Well, that's loud. First of all, I think you said everything I need to say, but yeah, it's an honor to be here. It's a great panel. I love cars. I've had the pleasure of having a 24-year career. It's my 24th year at SEMA. Things change a lot, and I really embrace change. I know we're kind of at a point now where some of the older companies are looking at how to evolve, and we're going to talk about that today. My business, if anything, my failure was that I was too early a lot of times. But that's just, as an enthusiast, as a hobbyist, I just love this stuff, and I like trying to figure out what's the next exciting technology, what's the next exciting application or use case. So yeah, 24 years ago, I was here bringing Japanese car tuning and more volume and time attack motorsports to the US. That business, Bulletproof Automotive, is going into its 25th year. And in 2013, we started the aftermarket for Teslas with Unplugged Performance. And then about 3 years ago, we started producing Tesla police vehicles with Up.Fit. And the common thread between all of this is just advocating for car culture, loving the idea about what you can do with vehicles, loving the different use cases. Our brand is fairly agnostic as to what the use case is, although we tend to gravitate towards cars that are fun to drive, fast. And the nature of the aftermarket is to make vehicles better and more personalized and more specialized than what they come from on the assembly line. So I think that's always a constant thread in our business. We deal a lot with Tesla. Teslas are great vehicles, but there's still opportunities to make them better for different use cases. Would have said the same thing 15 years ago with the Nissan GTR or Porsches or anything else we were working with. There's always an opportunity to make something better, and that's really the fun thing about the aftermarket, is that there's so many different flavors and styles of what you can do with the vehicle. I think celebrating that is important for everyone here, regardless of whether it's EV powered or hydrogen or gas or God knows what else is coming. It's really about the personalization and creativity that comes from these types of events. So it's just an honor to be here and have this fascinating world and career that I've had. And I look forward to today's conversation and look forward to seeing what everyone else is doing.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, I lost my clicker, but we got Bill Strickland, co-CEO of Meyers Manx. Bill's had a long career kind of in traditional automotive across Daimler and Ford, but then also in kind of the new crop of automotive innovators across Faraday Future and Canoo, and is now co-CEO of Meyers Manx, kind of revitalizing a storied, old brand and bringing new life to it and new innovation to it. Bill.
That's right, Christian. First, thank you for having me here. Really great to see you all this afternoon. As was mentioned, I went to the Ford education. I like to think of it that way. I steal that line from a good friend of mine. And that's where I really learned how to be a leader and an engineer and how to bring great products to market. I got to work on some really interesting things, like I got to launch Lincoln in China. And we do actually export cars from here to there. I know that. I also got to co-found an electric car company called Canoo. If any of you are thinking of starting your own EV car company, I would advise against it. It's a very difficult thing to do. And then I was the global chief engineer for the Ford Fusion. I led the police program for a while. And so I've had some really great experiences, and I'm so happy and honored to be relaunching this 60-year-old brand, Meyers Manx. It's very iconic. I can't tell you how many places I've been where people have had an experience from their childhood, or they remember an uncle, a father. People built it in the garage. And so we for the first time are launching our all EV line, and it's the first serial production car in the company's history. And there's a big difference between building one every month and building 3 per hour. And so those are the kinds of scale challenges that we're facing. And I'm really excited that we're closing in on final release of all the engineering, and we're looking at getting these cars out, starting sort of middle of next year. But thank you again for the chance to be here and speak on this.
This is great. Thank you all. Before we get into the discussion, I want to do a quick lightning round so the audience can get to know you all a little better. Okay, just a quick answer. Coffee, tea, or bourbon? Zach?
Coffee.
No, it depends on the time of the day. I would say coffee in the morning.
Yeah. Ben?
Go with bourbon.
When in Vegas, right? Okay. Okay, Star Wars or Marvel?
Marvel.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Oh, split. Audience, Star Wars? Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Okay, Marvel? Okay, man. Okay, track day or road trip?
Road trip.
Track day.
Depends on the car, but probably track day.
Okay, audience, track day? Okay, road trip. Okay, split. I like it. Okay, final one, Harris or Trump? No, I'm kidding. Don't answer that, please. We don't have to stop the panel, incite a riot. Okay. Let's get into it a little bit. I know we've got a couple great questions lined up for everybody. Maybe just to start off, you're all seeking to increase the penetration of EVs in kind of different markets outside of the mainstream OEM space. What are you seeing as the biggest challenges you're facing to do so? Anybody can jump in, just pop around.
Well, just to start, for us, we see EV technology as, honestly, it's an easier thing to start with than an internal combustion engine. And so the challenges that I'm facing are finding the right suppliers with the right quality and the integration of all the components. And I will tell you, 4 or 5 years ago, there weren't so many options as there are now. And so there are plenty of really great 3-in-1 drive units and plenty of really great batteries at scale. And so it's securing contracts as a small company and making sure that we have the ability to integrate that technology and those parts together.
I think there's a couple aspects. Overall, whether it's this category of electrification or just in general, a big component is education. You know, having to communicate to people why this is interesting, why it's relevant, if it's a police car, why it saves taxpayer money, or why it's safer for the officers. Explaining the why is always a heavy lift because you're asking people to change their mind from what their default answer is to something new. And that's always a heavy lift when you're shifting into a new category. And the other challenge maybe all of us feel, and many people in the audience might feel if you're in manufacturing, is it's capital intensive and challenging to be early in the market because it's usually front loaded as far as engineering and development and tooling. So there's amazing aspect and a challenging aspect of trying to build a marketplace, trying to educate customers and investing ahead of the market. And it's a common challenge that probably everyone feels, but to me that comes first top of mind.
Yeah, and I'll speak to the EV conversion world real briefly. I would say the number one challenge is cost. It's just crazy expensive to do one of these right now, and just to give the audience an idea, a basic budget build is at least 30K. And if you want somebody to do it for you, that's another 30K. And the result is something with not very impressive horsepower and maybe goes 100 miles of range. None of the cars here are 60K builds. That just goes to show you, you know, these are very complex, highly custom, heck of science projects. They're very difficult. So number one is cost, number two is complexity, and just along those lines is just the availability of parts that you know, people can use in these custom builds. So we're trying to address all of those at FormosaEV, trying to, you know, bring the aftermarket up to speed with what we have available in the OEM world. And that really starts with software controls and a control unit that can speak to everything and really simplify the user experience for these custom EV builders.
So you kind of touched on supply chain there, Zach, and I'm wondering, like, for you guys, how does, you know, everybody's got a compliance car now at least, and some people are more serious about it than others, but how are the kind of major OEMs either helping or hurting your guys' efforts, or is it a non-issue?
Well, so there, I guess you could say that recent legislation that allows for the Replica Act is a big help to companies like ourselves. And to the extent that the OEMs helped pass that, I can't say. They allowed it to exist, I guess. Maybe the lobby didn't stop it. But then, you know, I'm finding that suppliers in North America are very difficult to talk to because they are fully subscribed to OEMs. And so we end up looking overseas for parts and supply, and it's out of necessity to stay alive. You know, so I'm not sure that that's an OEM. That's more a tier one thing.
I think on our end, because we're so closely aligned with Tesla in particular, we're really standing on the shoulders of giants with this. And the baseline technology in these vehicles is so good that it's already starting as a fairly compelling argument as far as why to look at an EV. And that helps our job in the same way that back in the, you know, when I was focused on developing stuff for Bulletproof Automotive, we would gravitate towards cars like the Nissan GTR because they were inherently fast, but you could still make them twice as fast. So as we build race cars, as we build police cars, as we do anything on the aftermarket side, our baseline vehicles are very, very capable, and that's helpful. On the challenging side of the equation, it's much more of a walled garden with EVs than there has been in the past with other vehicles, and the palette of colors we can paint with in terms of how we can modify it is limited within the bounds of everything from software, firmware, to now navigating complexities around full self-driving with autopilot is a whole different variable for the aftermarket and for us. So there's pros and cons, but I would say the starting point for vehicles, the value of what you get for the money right now is the best I've ever seen by a long shot. The new performance Model 3, for example, is like the craziest deal ever as a driver's car. I see John in the background. He's going to be racing one tomorrow. These cars are so capable, and I think that, because brands, and I'm using Tesla, but really any EV brand is doing a lot of lifting for us because it's educating all customers of the benefits of EV. And that's a job we all have to do on the EV side, but everyone who drives an electric vehicle and realizes the instant torque, realizes the low center of gravity, realizes the safety benefits, that benefits us in the education side of the equation, which is really the first step to building a market.
When it comes to OEMs, I just got to pick on Ford. I'm sorry. And I say this as a red-blooded American and a Michigan Wolverine. Go Blue. I'm rooting for Detroit. I really am. But, like the Detroit Lions, sometimes you're embarrassed by your team. You just got to objectively look at the scoreboard and say, like, we're behind. We're really behind. And we got work to catch up. So that's how I feel about Ford. In regards to the EV conversion world, I think they're actually hurting us. Because a few years ago, they touted this awesome EV conversion motor, the Ford Illuminator. They built a couple demos, I believe. And, they're not here today. Ford Performance does not have a booth here. And they hyped it up and just left everyone dry. So you can go on their Ford Motorsport website right now, and it says Ford Illuminator motor for $4,000. Here are the specs. It's basically a Mach-E front drive motor. So you can get one for $4,000 if you can find it. And I literally had this conversation this morning with a gentleman that got one. And he was so excited. He's a Ford guy. He wanted to put it in a first-generation Mustang. He finally got one, and then found out that, it doesn't come with an inverter. Okay, so you got to find an inverter to do that. Ford doesn't sell you one. The only one that works with it is a Cascadia. So now you got to go to Cascadia, ask them for an inverter that works with the Ford Illuminator motor. Okay, if you can find one, that's another $5,000 or so. Once you got that one, now you have now you have to control it. And the only you ask Cascadia, how do I control this thing? They say, you got to go to AEM and buy a VCU from them, which is another $1,500. And this entire user journey, like Ford is not dumb. They have very smart marketing people that do this for their OEM vehicles, but I really think their heart's not in it. They're doing this aftermarket stuff for EVs very half-heartedly. The user journey is just terrible, and I would rather them just not try at all. And so, thank God we have folks here like Legacy, like Hypercraft. We're trying to do right by the EV conversion community and putting together good products and good user experiences because the OEMs aren't doing it.
This is awkward, Zach, because we have a special guest here today, Jim Farley, CEO of Ford. No. But actually, no, it's funny you mentioned Ford because we do have a clip. I don't know if you guys caught, Jim Farley was on the Fully Charged podcast a couple weeks ago. He gave a fascinating interview, I thought, and we had a clip that talks about his experiences and really what both you guys, a couple of you guys touched on is having to go overseas for parts and really what that market looks like and what are some of the challenges working with suppliers overseas and what the pros and cons are. So I do want to get into that, but I'm going to try to play this clip from Jim and see if it works.
It's like everyone's talking about the Apple car, but the Xiaomi car,
which now exists and is on the road.
Which now exists.
Tens of thousands.
And it's fantastic. They sell 10,000, 20,000 a month. They're sold out for 6 months.
Wow.
That is an industry juggernaut and a consumer brand that is much stronger than car companies. I don't like talking about the competition so much, but I drive the
No.
Xiaomi. We flew one from Shanghai to Chicago, and I've been driving it for 6 months now, and I don't want to give it up.
Right. Wow. That's an extraordinary thing to say, isn't it?
Yes.
But as the,
Chris Farley's cousin there, in case you guys are wondering. But I mean, that's pretty crazy to hear him say that. That interview's fascinating, and I don't know about the aftermarket piece, but I think at least Jim appreciates the challenge that at least American OEMs have in this space. And Zach, since you brought it up, like, what do you see as in terms of the challenges of working with both China and then obviously Taiwanese supply base, and then what are the real advantages you're seeing from an aftermarket perspective?
Yeah, well, first, hats off to Jim Farley. He's got a lot on his plate. We've got a lot of catching up to do. I think we all just have to admit, like, Asia in general is far ahead in this game. In terms of supply chain, obviously China invested in the right places 10 years ago, and now they're reaping the benefits. Taiwan is behind, but not as behind as America. And we're renowned for electronics manufacturing. The tech folks here will know names like TSMC, Foxconn. We're responsible for your iPhones and NVIDIA GPUs. So we already have this very strong infrastructure to make electronics, EV components, and that's really one of our key advantages. Is relying on our partners to develop a whole ecosystem of products that work together. And listen, I'm not against China. Like we work together as much as we can, but not getting into politics, but it's just business. When we talk about the U.S. market, importing products from one country incurs a tariff. Importing from the other country doesn't. So, we're in this very unique time in the world where we have to try our best to work together and whatever makes the most sense. FormosaEV is a California company. We're based in Orange County. We also have a R&D and manufacturing center in Taipei. And we're just trying to, do best by everybody.
Overseas stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I started going to China in 2014, and I had the job of exporting Lincolns into China and developing Lincolns built in the United States to fit the Chinese market. And it was a really interesting thing. And in 2014, there was a certain, I'll call it, there was a lot of focus on production, not a lot of focus on quality. And I was there recently, just a few weeks ago, and the quality of the products that they're making is better than, it's fantastic. So everything is fully automated. Every operation in the plants is redundantly checked. It really shocked me. And so you think, well, that's, and it's a 5 million square foot facility and a company that makes 2 million drive units per year, and I've not seen that in the United States. And so it's shocking, the scale. And it was true for drive units and batteries and other components. And so the overseas markets are putting a lot of capital and a lot of time and energy in getting it right. And Zach, I don't agree with you about Ford, but I'll agree with you about the fact that our domestic market doesn't offer the same variety of product, and it's certainly not commoditized, and it's certainly it's just hard to find. And if you can find it, it's significantly more expensive. And so, as good capitalists, and American citizens, it creates a crisis of conscience to a certain extent. But we're making really fun dune buggies, and My focus is not to invent new technology. It's to build a really great brand, to build cars that are fun, and to put smiles on everybody's faces. And so it's the best technology solution that we can find is, you know, what I'm looking for from the supply chain.
I'll just add that it concerns me a little bit in general. I'd like to have diversity of supply chain, and it concerns me for any company to be too reliant on any one country or expertise. And America, in some respects, is somewhat asleep at the wheel, which is scary. I'd like to see more diversity in the U.S. to have competitive options. It's understandable, and I've seen instances, as everyone's described, of quality improving overseas and quality supply chain just disappearing from the U.S. entirely. And I think the risk level is very high for anyone in manufacturing to be dependent on any one manufacturer or any one country. You know, laws change, tariffs change, companies go in and out of business. One of the biggest risks to any organization, I think, is having a supply chain that's not diverse enough. So, everything else. My first trip to China was last year, and like anyone else would say, they're very far ahead in many categories in EVs. I saw a couple factories that are just massive, and it just makes me, in some cases, disappointed that American companies are not investing in the same way that we should. And so much of it is automation and robotics that the argument about labor rates, I'm not sure if that's really the same factor it used to be. This stuff should move more to the US and instead of moving away, and I hope that changes, because supply chain choice is really important. And the worst thing we can have is have no choice in the US and have to go overseas. That's a really bad outcome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and I'll just add real quick, you know, I think diversifying your supply chain options is really critical. And to that point, I think China is really great at mass production. So they're geared for mass producing a few items, and they do that very, very well and very cheaply. What's unique about Taiwan is it's much smaller. It's a much smaller island with 23 million people, but very talented. Taiwan is much better geared for low volume production and high flexibility, which is actually really perfect for the SEMA crowd. And then on top of that, we have our headquarters in California, where we do assembly and testing, final QC, and distribution from here. So I think there is a way to optimize the best of all the worlds and not be too reliant on any single point of failure.
So I want to flip a question over to Bill, which is, you mentioned starting with EV kind of just made sense, and you guys aren't philosophically anti-ICE, but there was a technological advantage, or at least a time to market advantage of starting with EV. Can you say more about that and why it made sense to start?
Yeah, sure. So no, we're not philosophically aligned to EVs. If anything, there's probably more religion around internal combustion engines in the company than there is about electric vehicles. But you know, the way I feel about it, there are really great applications for EV technology, and then there's some not so great applications for EV technology. And a dune buggy that you keep in your garage, that you know, we have plenty of range, and you never have to go to a gas station or lug a can of gas around. You know, it so depends on the use case. But it is also a hell of a lot easier to launch a new car without any emissions than it is to launch one with emissions. And so every bit of engineering we've done on the chassis and the platform would support future applications of internal combustion engines, because this is a choice the consumer should make. It's not a choice for me to make, but we have to get there, and this is an easier way of getting there, to be honest. Now, you know, some people want the air-cooled Volkswagen engine, and they like the way it sounds, and you know, that just gets everybody's blood pumping, and other people are scared of manual transmissions, and they want to just be able to get in the car and push the gas and make it go. And it's been interesting to me because we've got both vehicles available, and we've had them at a lot of events, and the younger crowd likes the EV better because it's easier, and the older crowds like the gas engines. And that's, you know, no real stereotype. It's just, I don't know that we teach people how to drive stick shifts anymore. I'm not sure that you can even buy one on the market. And so it's been a funny thing for me to watch. people be intimidated by the manual transmissions. So it's, again, there's no religion here. It's just a means to an end to be able to, again, put smiles on everybody's faces with the really cool products that I think we showed a second ago.
I just want to add something Bill said I think is really important, and I believe in it too. I'm very much all about promoting optionality, and I think having options is one of the best things that unites most people here at SEMA, and it's really all about whatever is the best solution for the application. We have the same approach. Our business is very much heavy in EVs, but I will not recommend an EV if a gasoline solution is better. The whole point is to make a better product, period. Not a better product with an asterisk and say, oh, because you had to choose EV, you choose this. When we're doing police cars, for example, the fact that it's an EV to me is almost not important. What's important is officer safety. What's important is taxpayer savings. What's important is the ability to be, instantaneous in a pursuit and to be highly stable, where you can't roll it, center of gravity is low. These are things that happen to come from being an EV, but you don't buy it or sell it as an EV. You buy it or sell it as the best solution for the job. And if it's not the best solution for the job, it shouldn't exist, is my point of view. I'm kind of a purist where it's not about a religion or a philosophy. The philosophy is buy the best thing for the job, whatever that might be. And it just so happens that EVs are becoming the better solution for the job for more and more things. And that trend line, I think, will continue every year as technology gets better and cheaper. So EVs will take market share. But I think the wrong way to look at it is buy an EV because you have to, or buy an EV because someone tells you to, or because the law changes to it. I'm very much about buy the thing that does the job the best.
Amen.
Yeah, agreed.
Great discussion. I love the conversation about the police vehicles. I mean, it looks awesome, first of all, but you see other opportunities, for kind of fleet conversions or fleets moving to EVs? Like what are the other good use cases for EV?
We're still exploring it. There's so many use cases just because the total cost of ownership, whether it's fuel savings or maintenance also applies to uptime. There's more uptime on these cars. The total cost of energy, like for these police departments, is comparable not to a car but to a motorcycle. It's really fascinating just how good they are at so many different things. So for us, our initial focus is police. We're starting to dive in a little bit into defense, and actually, I'll kind of to the point I was just saying, we have an interesting option that we're working on for a military Cybertruck, which is we're taking a Tesla, which is pure EV, and we're actually making it, we're going to make it work and run on multiple fuel sources. It can run on GP8, on a common fuel source for jet fuel for military. And in some respects, as someone who works with Tesla, that's sacrilegious. But the real point here is that you need to solve problems in an effective way. And being able to make a range extender, basically a portable Tesla supercharger in a Cybertruck, helps adopt other EVs in a remote environment. It allows you to power a grid. It allows you to power, electric, anything, whether it's cars, bikes, or otherwise. So it is still very much on mission of helping adopt EVs, but being able to have multiple fuel sources in that environment actually opens up opportunities and makes it more compelling. So I guess that's kind of an example of, taking the philosophy I'm saying and applying it. The idea to have a Cybertruck that theoretically you can put jet fuel in it or biodiesel and have it generate power sounds strange, but it's really understanding a use case and trying to solve for that use case. So there's so many use cases for EVs, but the inverse is impossible. You can't take a Humvee equivalent, a JTLV, these kind of vehicles, and then give them a stationary battery like a Cybertruck to haul that energy around. You can start with the Cybertruck and add fuel, but you can't go the other way backward. So in terms of understanding opportunities, we just look at the tools available. In this case, mass-produced Cybertrucks are fairly reliable, fairly ubiquitous, or will be in the future, cost-effective, a vehicle-to-grid technology. You can hook them up with Starlink and have internet anywhere you want. There's so many use cases just on the Cybertruck platform for police, for military, fire, any kind of first responder situation, and then a lot of stuff I can't even fathom. But it's a platform. These platforms are very capable at a lot of things. And perhaps, as I've learned working with law enforcement, the only thing more important than saving money is saving lives. And these things are by definition the safest car to be in. You really almost can't roll them if you try. You know, in any other vehicle, a front end impact, you usually have an engine up there. In this case, the whole thing is a crumple zone. You have a lot of space to be able to absorb the impact. So when we're dealing with fleet, I think the most compelling thing is the fact that if you don't get one of these vehicles, you're putting your personnel in danger unnecessarily.
Yeah, I'd second the fleet operations, and so there are companies trying to electrify delivery vehicles and delivery fleets, and it all makes great sense because maintenance costs are lower, the cost per mile is lower. You know, you typically have a depot where you've got charge infrastructure to support it, and you know the charge infrastructure is a bigger problem than I think it's led on. I think most people understand that you can't always find a charger with an operating handle. I mean, hell, even in Los Angeles County, there was a Wall Street Journal article that found 40% of the available public chargers were disabled somehow or couldn't be used. And so, those applications where you've got high maintenance costs because you've got a fleet of vehicles and you've got a regular route that comes back home to a depot at night, I think it will become just, as soon as that technology is adopted in those areas, you're going to be at a significant disadvantage if you aren't using it. And I agree with the safety points also, but the maintenance costs and the total cost of ownership is so much lower in those applications. If you were an over-the-road trucker, I know there's people working on that. I don't really see that as a super application. Maybe they're hybrid versions, which I'm sure will continue to develop. But they're really great applications, and they're really not so great applications.
So we've kind of been doing our own EV Mythbusters here, but maybe let's poll the audience. Who here owns an EV or will admit to owning an EV? Okay, there. Who here is a never EVer, very skeptical of EVs? Okay. Who's like EV curious? Like a little, like maybe next generation. Okay. So for the panelists here, I think we've done a little bit of it, but what's one of the biggest like misconceptions you might want to correct, or like something that people who aren't EV converts or open to EVs would need to understand?
We're not trying to take away your gas cars. I still ride a gas motorcycle, like Jim Farley said. I don't want to give it up. I love that. I love the sound. I love the rumble. That experience. Like I'm a car guy. I'm a motorcycle guy. I appreciate gas engines. We have people on our team that literally design gas engines. Still, it's what we want to tell everyone is it's just another option. It's 2024. We have modern technology to enable an electric drivetrain. Nobody's forcing it on you. It's just another option to play with if you want to put it in your car. And if you want to do it, we want to make that process a little easier and a lot safer than what we're seeing out right now in the DIY world.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's an application-specific thing. If your life is commuting back and forth the same route every day and you've got a garage to charge it in, it is a much more convenient thing to have an electric car. If your regular pattern is to drive long distances and you've got to stop and charge someplace, I don't know, maybe that's less convenient. But it's very dependent on your application. I will tell you, the acceleration from the electric vehicles and the complete lack of maintenance are kind of addicting. And once you drive one, and especially some of the Teslas or the Rivians, these cars that have 1,000 horsepower, your acceleration is better than everybody else on the road. And that's kind of an addicting thing after you drive it for a while. That and the lack of maintenance.
I think the key thing is just experiencing one, and anyone who hasn't driven an EV, it's an eye-opener the first time you do it. I just 2 days ago was hosting an event in Atlanta. We have a Tesla Corsa track day event, and this was a hybrid Tesla Corsa and a law enforcement training event. And we had some law enforcement there, first time ever driving an EV. They drove a Tesla Model Y, and as an experiment, we had them take one of their Ford Explorer PIUs on a racetrack to chase the Model Y. And the person who drove the Model Y had never driven an EV in her life. And I watched her just leave the PIU in the dust and then get out with her hands up in the air, She was so pumped up, and then I videoed her. I was curious what her experience was, and the first thing she said was, I was never about EVs, I never liked them, I never drove one, now I totally get it. And I think that's the most important thing is you can make whatever choice you want, but you have to at least be open enough to experience driving it, and then from there go to the stuff Bill's talking about. What's the use case? And you'll find most use cases, I don't know the exact percentage, but more than 50% right now that people experience probably an EV is a good choice. Some percentage they're not, but the only constant is the percentage that's not is decreasing every year. So there's lots of benefits, some negatives, but the biggest misconception is people just not experiencing it at all. You have to experience something to have an understanding.
I think that's a great note to end on. We're at time, so I want to thank our panelists. Will everyone please give our panelists a huge round of applause. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today, sharing your insights. And thank you again to SEMA for having us. I thought it was a great discussion. We didn't have time for audience Q&A, but I think pretty much everyone at least can hang out for a few minutes afterwards if anybody has any questions or want to talk to the panelists. So thank you guys again. Thank you all for coming, and enjoy the rest of the show.